Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specializing in lucha libre, porosu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all built into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory. There they strive to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hey yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click the subscribe button to show your support. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. This episode we got all kinds of things going on, primarily the New Japan Cup Night 2 results we have for you, as well as some other tidbits from around the world of professional wrestling, starting off in Madison Square Garden for the big match that a lot of people were looking forward to, Brock Lesnar versus Kevin Owens, the first time they're going to meet. Well, it was not exactly what some people were hoping for. I personally was hoping that after WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar and Kevin Owens would enter into a huge feud that would see Kevin Owens really come up to Brock's level and Brock Lesnar really establish Kevin Owens as like the predominant heel going forward. Or if nothing else, you could have flipped Kevin Owens to be the face if you had to, since Brock's going to beat Goldberg and go that route. But either way, this match at Madison Square Garden, absolutely not what I was looking forward to. This comes with Kevin Owens just absolutely getting decimated. Multiple suplexes. He hits like a little bit of offense early, but after that, it's just suplexes galore, F5 pin. This total match, start to finish, it's almost like watching a Goldberg match. It was just over 2 minutes long. This match made Kevin Owens look just so weak, and that's not a good thing. When you're heading into a situation where Chris Jericho is going to be leaving in May, you've got Goldberg leaving the promotion after WrestleMania, these two could really be the program heading out of WrestleMania. And unfortunately, at least for the fans in New York City, they've now seen this and have seen this total annihilation of Kevin Owens. And I'm not a big fan of doing that. Not to one of your premier stars, one of the people who's really held the brand together for the better part of the last year. So gonna have to see how they work that out. I still think that's going to be the match, the feud that they go with post-Mania, but this kind of puts a little bit of a tainted view of the whole thing after seeing him get squashed like that. I'm going to jump into the results from the New Japan Cup. First match of the night, Jushin Thunder Liger and Yuji Nagata teaming up to take on David Finlay and Tiger Mask. Solid match, back and forth. My understanding is this was supposed to be two separate matches, but at the last minute, they combined the two into a tag team match. Yuji Nagata picks up the win for his team by getting Tiger Mask to submit with an armbar, but overall, it's always exciting to see Liger out there. Dave Finlay's really coming along. That is Fit Finlay's son. He's really coming along as a performer. I'm excited to see what his future holds. In the match number 2, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and Bad Luck Fale, 3 members of the Bullet Club, go out and take on Hiroshi Tenzan, Satoshi Kojima, and Hayari Kawato. This match here, this is pure brawling. I mean, back and forth, heavy shots, and they talk about Japanese strong style. This is about as hard-hitting as it gets. The finish sees Loa pin Kawato off a variation of a Samoan driver. So Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and Bad Luck Fale represent for the Bullet Club, which is to be expected. The Bullet Club is one of the most over factions in New Japan history. Tetsuya Naito, Evil, Bushi, and Himuro Takahashi. They go into the match number 3 going against Michael Elgin, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kushida, and Raisuke Taguchi. Again, all 8 of these competitors are top level talents. Just the night before, Evil ended up upsetting Hiroshi Tanahashi in the opening matches to the New Japan Cup in night 1. So there's really building a lot of momentum for Evil. Evil is the one who comes off his win with Tanahashi and picks up the win in this match as well with an STO on Taguchi. They're really pushing him to be a main event star. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the tournament, because I can't see you putting him over someone like Tanahashi that night, putting him into this situation to win again, and then not pushing him all the way at least to the finals of the tournament. That's just my opinion. In match 4, Gato and Jetto team up with Toru Yano and Hiroki Goto and Kazuchika Okada. That is the Chaos faction. They defeat Tasha Michinoku, El Desperado, Tai Chi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Takashi Iizuka. They are all members of Suzuki Gun. For people who don't know, Suzuki Gun was actually in a rival promotion. They were in New Japan, they left, they came back, and this is their somewhat like a NWO invasion. This is them invading New Japan, but they fall here to the Chaos faction. The ending sees Yano Yano pinned Iizuka with a low blow and a roll-up. Jetto and Geto posed with the junior tag team titles after the match, because that's apparently where they're going to take this after the match. At the end of the match, they end up throwing the championships back to Taichi and Kanemaru. I expect them to be facing them probably the same night as the finals of the tournament. But this is a cool way for them to set up a match. And, you have Kazuchika Okada out there, who is the IWGP champion. And yes, he's the main draw. But the reality is, you got to elevate other characters. And just simply by being out there with Okada, Jetto and Geto, who have a long history in the promotion, Hiroki Goto, another one, Toru Yano, all are premier talents. And it's nice to see someone other than Kazuchika Okada pick up the win. Match 5 sees Juice Robinson versus Yujiro Takahashi. This is a tournament match for the New Japan Cup, first round. And to a lot of people's surprise, Juice Robinson gets the pin with the Pulp Friction. So very cool to see Juice Robinson get elevated a little bit. Takahashi's a big name in New Japan. So really, I expected him to knock out Juice Robinson in the first round. This is kind of a surprise to me. Now going forward, Juice Robinson's going to have some really stiff competition. But at the end of the day, it speaks volumes to how well the Japanese crowd and the Japanese promotion is receiving Juice Robinson to see him get this win. Sanada, the man who used to wrestle for TNA, he was X Division champion. He defeats Yoshihashi to advance to the second round. He hits a skull end twice to pick up the win. Sanada is one of the younger but incredibly talented wrestlers in New Japan, and the reality is TNA messed up. They had him on a short-term contract. They should have locked him down. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. He is a high flyer. He can do all the technical stuff. He can even hit some of the heavy shots if you need him to. So really impressed with everything that he's been doing. Match 7 sees Katsuyori Shibata defeat Minoru Suzuki. Minoru Suzuki is the leader of the Suzuki Gun faction. Taichi was at ringside. He attacked Shibata a whole bunch of times. He's also a member of the Suzuki Gun. And when the referee was distracted, Taichi kept getting involved. But Shibata picks up the win with the big right hand and the PK. So again, that was actually a win I wasn't expecting either. With all the buildup of this invasion by the Suzuki Gun, I really expected Minoru Suzuki to at least make it to the second round. But nothing tops match number 8. Tomohiro Ishii, who is a phenomenal wrestler in his own right. Don't get me wrong, he's an incredible wrestler. But he defeats Kenny Omega to advance to the second round. This is a surprise of a lifetime. Like, no one would have seen this coming. Kenny Omega tried multiple times to hit the one-winged angel. He kept missing it. It was like 4 or 5 times he tried to move. Ishii gets the win with a wicked lariat. I'm thoroughly confused with their booking. Now, I understand if you're trying to push Ishii to the main event, so you're going to have he and Evil will probably be the finals. But if that's what you're going for, I get it. But at the end of the day, I would not have put Kenny Omega in that situation then. He's coming off of the quote-unquote 6-star match, courtesy of the Wrestling Observer ranking system. But the reality is, Kenny Omega is one of your biggest draws in the company, and he just signed to stay with you instead of going to the biggest brand in the world, and I don't think this is the kind of stuff he expected to do. Now, I saw some people commenting that this is great because then he can do this whole comeback legacy type of thing, and this come from behind story and building himself back up to redemption and eventually win the championship. I get that, but you have to capitalize on his popularity now. And what I don't know if the Japanese audience and Japanese promoters understand is that their influence here in the United States is growing continuously. Access Television's deal with them has been huge in helping bring in new viewers to their product. And when you do that, you have to cater to that side of the pond also. And I'm not saying that we're better fans or more plugged in fans or anything of that sort. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, you have a new audience, a huge new segment of your audience that could potentially generate a lot of income for your company, especially with their plans to expand into the United States. You don't want to bury Kenny Omega now when he could really be the driving force in your North American expansion. You got to keep him strong, and he has not done anything of significance since Wrestle Kingdom when he faced Okada. So that's just my wrap up of night 2 of the New Japan Cup. Very cool event. I love what New Japan does. They come up with some really great ideas, and they really have a seamless way of implementing their strategy. And really, they always talk about promoters who can they hold the crowd in the palm of their hands. New Japan does a lot of that. They are really good at manipulating their audience. So kudos to them. There's a rumor circulating right now that WWE may be adding another member to the 2017 Hall of Fame class. That person is potentially going to be Cyndi Lauper. There is word out that Wendy Richter, who has never been one to appear at these big conventions or anything like that, is going to be making her first appearance ever at WrestleCon this year, which is going to be held over WrestleMania weekend. She'll be down in Orlando, so the theory is they may have Wendy Richter there to induct Cyndi Lauper, which there's a lot of people that they've talked about inducting into that celebrity wing, some that I thought was just absolutely ludicrous. But at the end of the day, I'm actually okay with Cyndi Lauper going in. She's a big part of the success of WrestleMania 1, and she's a big part of why there was such mass media attention on that event. So, more power to them. I'd be happy to see her get in there. It makes a lot more sense to me than, like, you know, Pete Rose or whoever. Bob Uecker. I actually didn't have a problem with Bob Uecker either, but you know what I'm saying. I'd like Wrestling Hall of Fames to stick more with wrestling. It's just my opinion. The Briscoes and Bully Ray are in the news today. They have defeated the Kingdom for the Ring of Honor 6-Man Tag Team Championship at the TV tapings. Part of the reason this may have happened, TK O'Ryan suffered a huge leg injury. If you get a chance, you can go online, you can see the video. It's gruesome, I'll warn you that now. But he ends up doing a moonsault out to the outside, and he lands with his shin hitting the guardrail, and you could just see immediately. I mean, this is like flashbacks of Psycho Sid, like thorough breakage of the leg, and he is going to be out an extended period of time. And because of that, I think they felt the need to transition to championships elsewhere. They did have Silas Young come out, and he was the one who ended up working the match to help transition the titles over to the Briscoes and Bully Ray. But again, you know, nothing but well wishes for TK O'Ryan. Hopefully he gets back as quick as possible. But it was a gruesome injury. There is some huge news in the, I don't want to say the TNA world, because I know they're integrated into the situation, but Crash Lucha Libre, which has Conan as one of their lead talent agents, has announced a deal with Impact Wrestling and with Pro Wrestling Noah. So if you remember, Impact Wrestling made a deal already with Pro Wrestling Noah to share talent. They have shows coming up soon with James Storm and a few others going over to Japan for Pro Wrestling Noah. This is something else that's been in the works for a while. So some of the Crash Lucha Libre stars have already appeared on Impact Wrestling. So now we have this working relationship between these three groups. This really has an old school feel, almost like an NWA feel to it, as Jeff Jarrett had that original vision with Global Force Wrestling to create this multi-company organization where talent can shift in and out and help each other out and grow to be a real force, no pun intended, in the wrestling business. And now it looks like this may be the beginnings of some legitimate talent exchange between some pretty big companies. So I'm excited to see how that works out. Some other news, Jack Swagger, he was supposed to wrestle at a WAW event this weekend. He ended up getting pulled because he has still not been granted his release by WWE, which everybody thought was happening like a week ago, and he still hasn't been cleared. So he's pulled from the WAW event this weekend in the United Kingdom. He gets replaced by Chris Adonis. So if you don't know who Chris Adonis is, that's the former Chris Masters from WWE times. They were doing this television taping. They have in one taping, Adonis wins the WAW championship, and then in a later episode, they have him lose the championship to Alberto El Patron. Now, if you don't know anything about WAW, that's the promotion that Patron's fiance, Paige's family, owns. So interesting to see how they did all that. You know, this is almost has one of those feels like, you know, obviously Paige isn't a male wrestler, so you can't say it's like the promoter giving a championship to his son, but I don't understand why they're making it so obvious that, you know, Alberto El Patron is your son-in-law, you know, or future son-in-law. Not exactly the guy you automatically push, because it just makes you look bad. It makes you look weak as a promoter. It's just my opinion. So I would have loved to have seen them let it stay on Chris Masters. I've always been a Chris Masters fan. I think he was so underappreciated in WWE, and they could have done so much more with him. But at the end of the day, that's what they chose to do. Former WWE talent Adam Rose, also known as Leo Kruger at times when he was in NXT, he's announced he's going to be stepping away from the Squared Circle at the end of 2017. So despite all the buzz that they created when he first was introduced to the main roster, his character it didn't impress Vince McMahon. And that's the problem. You know, you have all these talent evaluators and all these people who go into the production and they create a character and they foster the character in NXT and they bring him through the ranks. He's really successful. He was the Florida Championship Wrestling champion, came to NXT, was very successful, and then you bring him to the main roster, and if Vince doesn't like your gimmick, it's just over for you. And I hate that that's the way it is, but I get it. This has been Vince's baby since he took it over from his father, and if you've got something you've cultivated that long and with that much blood, sweat, and tears, you're literally, I mean, it's got to be incredibly impossible for him to try to turn over creative control to other people. So a lot of people give Vince a lot of slack or a lot of hatred actually, for the way he handles different things. People he pushes, people he doesn't. But if you think about it, it really is, it's his baby. So he's very protective. And I'm not surprised to see that happen with any talent, but it's kind of a shame because Adam Rose is actually a relatively solid performer. You know, the addition of the comedic segments, the use of the human-sized bunny character, you know, that made it so that any possibility of him being a major star, that was pretty much up in smoke. He did have a domestic violence allegation against him that led to his release from WWE. He went back to work in the independent circuit, but, you know, you have to wonder what could have been. You know, had he been pushed the right way, even given just a hair more realistic chance to succeed, even with the silly character, because actually there was a lot of people who loved the entrance, you know, all the people jumping and partying, and that was actually pretty popular with the fans. It was Vince that it wasn't popular with, so you have to wonder, you know. It could be said for a lot of the current roster, you know, what would have happened if they were just handled just a little differently. We're going to jump to our This Day in Pro Wrestling History segment. We've been getting some real positive vibes about this segment. 34 years ago today, Greensboro, North Carolina, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he wasn't really called the Dragon yet back then, but Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood defeat Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernoodle in a steel cage match, and that's where they win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. This is huge because this is before, you know, later that year is when they would have Starrcade. And, you know, Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood would be, you know, going for those titles at Starrcade again. This is really cements them as a great tag team. It's the end of a great feud with Slaughter and Kernoodle. The cage match is legendary. If you get a chance, go back and check it out. YouTube it up or whatever you got to do. 24 years ago today, in Radnor, Pennsylvania, Superfly Jimmy Snuka defeats Glenn Osborne. It's a tournament final to win the recently vacated ECW Television Championship. This is back when it was still Eastern Championship Wrestling. This is before Shane Douglas threw the belt down and all that kind of stuff. This is when the corporation was just trying to get its traction. Still drawing 100, 200 people to a show, not a lot of viewership, but they did get a television deal, and this was one of the first episodes that aired on Sports Channel Philadelphia. So very cool moment to remember and reflect on. You know, it's bizarre how high they rose in popularity, knowing where they started. They started with drawing 50 to 200 people, and then they grew into that, you know, huge phenomena that was ECW. 17 years ago today, again, ECW related, they presented Living Dangerously. And there's a lot of things you could talk about that pay-per-view. I'm going to focus on one in particular, the famous, or now infamous, Danbury Fall. This is the match between New Jack and Vic Grimes, where they end up going up a scaffold and falling like 20 feet. And this is the one where Vic Grimes, according to New Jack, he has said in multiple interviews that in that situation, Vic Grimes is up on the huge scaffolding, and he gets scared. He doesn't want to take the bump off of the scaffolding. And as New Jack goes to throw him off the scaffolding, which is part of what they're supposed to do, they're supposed to go through some tables and it'll break their fall. Vic Grimes pulls back, and it causes New Jack to spin at a different rate than they had anticipated, and by the time they ended up missing part of the tables, and Vic Grimes' back ended up slamming New Jack's head into the floor. And according to him, there was a documentary that he did, Forever Hardcore, where he says that he had like brain fluid coming out of his nose, and he's still blind in one eye to this day because of it. This was heinous, and when you look at it, and it was the pinnacle of ECW's like hardcore violent period. I think after that fall, they realized they needed to tone it down just a little bit to protect their talent. So, but either way, it's a famous moment in ECW history. 13 years ago today in Tokyo, Japan. I know a lot of people have not seen this match. It's awesome. Daniel Bryan, then known as Bryan Danielson, and Curry Man. If you don't know who Curry Man is, that is the character that was portrayed by the brand new Ring of Honor World Champion, Christopher Daniels. And when they go in, they face and defeat Gedo and Jetto, the ones who I was just talking about, for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship. It's kind of funny that 13 years later, Gedo and Jetto are now trying to challenge for the same championship. Daniel Bryan and Curry Man have gone on to much, much bigger things. But very cool to look back at that match. Pull that one up on YouTube if you could, too. Today would have been the 93rd birthday of Joni Mae Young. Mae Young, oh, the memories, whether it's giving birth to a hand, winning the Divas Championship at such an old age, you know, seeing her hang out with Mark Henry. I could go the rest of my life and never picture that again, and I'd be okay. Just saying. But the reality is, she got started way back, you know, 1940s and 50s. She was a huge star. facing people like Mildred Burke and eventually Fabulous Moolah, who she became huge friends with. They stayed together pretty much the rest of their life. When she passed away, she actually had her ashes scattered in the same place that Moolah was buried. I mean, the two of them were inseparable. So, happy birthday to the late, great Mae Young. What an amazing influence on the women wrestlers of today. It's fantasy booking time. We've been working through this 64-man tournament. We have our next set of matches up for you now. You remember yesterday we had some real solid ones. We're going to start match 17 and 18, and I know this first one's controversial, but this is a fantasy tournament, so we can do this. Chris Benoit versus Jay Lethal, and Matt Hardy versus the Great Muta. Now with Matt Hardy, if you want to use the broken character, that's fine. Whatever you feel, these four men at their pinnacle of their wrestling career, who would have won those matches? So Chris Benoit versus Jay Lethal, and Matt Hardy versus the Great Muta, a match that I would have loved to have seen. Please make sure you give us a review, give us a subscribe. Those help us immensely in funneling more and more traffic to this podcast and helping us grow. We grow when you grow with us. We are a direct result of your efforts and your enjoyment. So I hope what we do makes you happy. And if it does, those subscribes mean the world to us. Don't forget about the Fro Life Planning contest going on. For those of you who don't know what Fro Life Planning is, we help students and adult learners find a path to higher education or a new career. And I want to do that for you. So every month, we're giving away a free 30-minute one-on-one phone consultation to a lucky winner. And the way you do this, there's no purchase necessary. Follow a few simple steps. One, launch iTunes in your computer. Go to the Fro Wrestling Podcast iTunes page. Click on subscribe and write us a review. When you submit that review, it's going to send me a notification, and then what I want you to do after that is go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com/contest, and you'll see there's a bar there to enter your email address. When I get the email from you, and I also get the information from iTunes that, hey, this guy submitted a review for you, I can match those up and enter you in that contest. I want to give those away. I want to help people find their path to higher ed or to that new job. So give me the opportunity to help you do that. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us soon. Our next episode should be a very exciting one. I have a meeting tonight with somebody. I'm going to try to get you guys another interview with a very interesting guest. Special thanks, as always, go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects we use throughout the show. Today's podcast was sponsored, as always, by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side with this new game from Beazle Games and bring that fun and excitement back to family game night by going to www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople to pick up your copy today. And to AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade needs. We want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you, as always, to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com. Learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you, as always, for taking time with us. We appreciate all your support. If you want more wrestling news and rumors, our publication, the group that we write for, www.tsjsports.com/WWE, and you can go there and you can find the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling, all from our group of talented writers. Until next episode, everybody, take care. Good night.